Looks like we've got a quorum. Is that correct? Gordon, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry,
Oh, there we
I forgot I was muted. We do have a quorum, so if you'd
Okay.
like to get started, we can.
Yeah, we might as well get started if we've got a full agenda. So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the July 7th, 2021 MAG Standards and Details Committee meeting. Just going to start right off the bat. Call to order. Any introductions? Is there anybody on here that typically isn't in the meetings that you know of, Gordon, or just out there?
We do have several people who have worked on the landscaping and outside right-of-way specs that are on that may want to introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Wayne Colbank. I'm with Logan Simpson, and I've been helping Ann Reichman and Gordon in developing the landscape spec updates.
Hi, this is Ann Richmond. I'm Director of ASU Sustainable Cities Network and Project Cities Program. And Wayne's being very modest. He's done a lot to help work on these different standards and specifications. So yeah, glad to attend today.
And I'm Zach Kosea from the City of Mesa Engineering Department. My background, I'm a landscape architect, and I've been helping with Wayne and Ann and the whole group on the landscape and irrigation efforts.
Okay, any others?
Yeah, I've been helping out on the same low impact development details as well. This is Eric Bonds from the city of Tempe, water engineering.
Okay. Is that the last?
I think that's all the new people. We do
Okay.
also have Rob Goodwin on for the case about the tables in 601.
Okay, excellent. So, all right, welcome everybody, Wayne, Ann, Zach, Eric. So if we can move on to item number 2, the call to the audience to attend the meeting by technological means. Members of the public may access the link to watch a video stream on the MAG website by clicking on the View and Listen link provided under the related links section at www.azmag.gov/event/27100. Or members of the public may submit written comments relating to this meeting to www.azmag.gov/comment within 1 hour of the posted start time for the meetings. Did we get any comments, Gordon?
No, we have not.
Okay, excellent. So I'll move on to item number 3, approval of the June 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. If everybody can take a minute or so and review those. If there's any comments, corrections, let us know. Okay, if we can move on to a motion for approval of the minutes. If I don't hear any comments.
Craig, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Ryan. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. I will call roll call. Avondale,
I don't think Jim is on yet.
Jim's not on yet. I can come back to him. That's not a big deal. So Buckeye is a yes. Chandler,
Yes.
I'm here.
okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Voting on the meeting minutes.
Aye.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. El Mirage,
They're not present.
not present. Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear, not present. Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. Phoenix,
Al Smolko, yes.
thank you. Scottsdale, Scottsdale not present. Surprise,
Yes.
thank you. Tim P.
Yes.
And Youngtown, not present. Okay, so with that, we will have approval of the June meeting minutes. Oh. Moving on to item number 4. Miscellaneous corrections. Looks like we've only got 3 items currently. Is that correct, Gordon?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing.
Nothing else has come back in. Okay. Uh-oh, I lost my meeting. Where'd it go? There it is. Where'd it go? Come on. Okay. So yeah, so far we've just got a couple of grammatical errors, some items for guardrail and meter vault cover revision. So if nothing else is there, we'll just move on. Item number 5, update to detail 212, the utility pothole repair. If I remember my emails correctly, I don't think Arvid was going to be here. He had a doctor's appointment.
I think he is here now. I saw him. I saw him in the list.
Okay, Arvid, are you on?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm here.
You are, okay. Do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So we've got in front of you the MAG 212 revision that's gone through the working committee and been passed around to various agencies for review. And so it now completes the desire to have a temporary pothole requirement, and then also the 212 detail for the permanent replacing and repairing of a utility pothole. And again, the temporary is going to be limited to primarily construction time, and then anything else to be a MAG 212 permanent detail to repair the asphalt if we're doing SUE work.
Okay.
Jim, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think we also routed it to the AUCC. Isn't that right, Dan? We didn't get any comments back from them.
That is correct.
Say that again. I lost you.
So we Dan ran it through AUCC committee, and we didn't get any comments back. So
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. I forgot about that.
I mean, I think we did a good job here. So that's good then.
Yes, I agree. I feel it's been very well vetted. And again, it definitely is current and up to date with all the technologies available to the different agencies, and again, it opens the door for the agencies to dictate what they will and will not allow for the replacement of the asphalt if it's not the keyhole technology, if they're not going to be reinstating the coupon. So I think all around it was a good team effort, and everyone was really pleased with it and looking forward to it to be voted on so we can start using it starting next year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we upgraded it and still allowed the older process, the type A to be still utilized. You know, it needs to be enhanced, which we did. So I think it's good. So
Agreed. That's all I got, Craig.
Agreed. Thank you. And we are up for action.
yeah, unless there's any other comments.
Yeah, this is Carl Rockwell. I just got one comment on section BB, the little pilot hole on the one we got right now. It shows that little pilot hole going all the way through the asphalt into the base below. But in this one, it only goes maybe a third of the way through. Is that intended to look that way?
Yes, it is intended to look that way. The purpose for that little hole is that the original keyhole technology procedure, when it came out, called for the installation of a 1/2-inch lag shield to be installed so that you could screw in a 1/2-inch eye bolt to then be able to lift the coupon out.
Okay.
We have since discovered through trial and error that we don't need to do that anymore. After we've completed the core drilling and we've punched through the asphalt to the concrete, we're able to hook onto that coupon with the vacuum hose from the vacuum truck and just lift the coupon right out.
Okay.
So the reason that we don't want it showing it going all the way through is, one, it never did, because it obviously is not correct. And secondly, we don't even have to use it that often anymore as it is.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
Okay. Thank you, Carl. Any other comments? Not hearing any. I guess we'd go for a motion for a vote on this. Can I get a motion?
Yeah, this is Carl. I'll make a motion to approve the
Thank you.
detail change.
Thank you, Carl.
212.
And a second? Buckeye will second it. So we'll go through a roll call vote here. Here we go. Avondale?
Yes.
Buckeye is a yes. Chandler? Not present.
Yes.
Yes. El Mirage was not present. Gilbert?
Yes.
Glendale?
Yes.
Goodyear?
Yes.
Maricopa County?
Yes.
Mesa?
Yes.
Peoria?
Yes.
Phoenix?
Al Smolko, yes.
Thank you. Scottsdale? Not present. Surprise?
Yes.
Tempe?
Yes.
And Youngtown? Not present. Okay. Case 2103, the updated utility pothole repair detail 212 passes with a majority yeses. Moving on.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Harvey.
you. Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. It was good working on it. We'll try and find another one to get started on now.
So, all righty. Well, moving on to item number 6. It's a proposed details, case 2105, proposed detail 529-1 and -2. It's a curb opening catch basin detail, City of Phoenix P1569. So this is one that I'm bringing up that, basically this is what the city of Buckeye uses for all of our catch basins. City of Phoenix has used it forever and ever. When we first proposed this, the county had some comments on adding some reinforcing, revising some line work, which is what you'll see in the drawing here in front of you, and kind of cleaned up some of the dimensioning that's on there. So those are some of the changes. If you can go to the next one, Gordon. So when I was looking at it, I was finding some comments or some things that were, on the original drawing that probably need to be a little bit cleaned up down in section AA. It looks like it's dimensioning from basic finish grade to the bottom of the deck. Looks like that should be a total of 8¼ inches with a 6-inch top and 2 inches of material native over top of that, with 1.5 inches of clearance between from the top of the concrete down to the reinforcing. That's just section AA. The access frame and cover, the little hook that's actually shown that's welded on the frame itself. I talked to a few foundries and they don't do that at all. It's not even manufactured like that. Not quite sure why that was there to begin with. If anybody has any insight, I'm definitely open to understand what that would be there for. But when the frame is actually installed, there's concrete poured all the way around it, so it's not going anywhere. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment on this, on the access frame and cover section there. Yeah, I just added it in because it actually shows on the City of Phoenix detail, but it wasn't on, I guess the one maybe you had started with, and that we were working on. But yeah,
Right.
if they're not using it, it looks like it's a field thing too. They show a 3/16 weld of a piece of rebar, so it's not like it comes from the foundry that way. And I assume it's meant to kind of anchor that frame into the concrete, so it couldn't be lifted out, or it wouldn't jump out of there if it, with a heavy wheel load or something else. But
Right. Yeah, and even looking at the detail itself, typically when the ring is actually, it's cast with the deck, so the deck is attached to the wings and the walls, so it's integral to the top. So
what was interesting too, if you take a close look at the city detail, this is the one without sidewalk. It actually shows a subgrade and backfill right up against that frame. So we added that concrete, the concrete in there against the frame, because I'm sure you don't want soil up against against a piece of cast iron.
right. Yeah. Do you happen to, Gordon, can you pull up the city detail?
Phoenix detail?
That one's
Or
fine.
you're
You may not have it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I changed that when I did ours. So if it's going to be on the City of Phoenix detail, it'll be on ours as well.
okay. So I guess it'll be on here somewhere.
Yeah, there it goes. See where it says
Yeah.
finish grade down lower left corner? Yeah, and there
Yeah.
too. It looks like there's a little piece of grass and soil. It's right up against the frame. I don't think we want that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's actually built like that either. I
Yeah,
believe that
so
there's concrete that's cast all the way around. In fact, if you look up in the plan view directly above that, you have that T
Yeah.
dimension, and that's going to be all concrete.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why it showed that on both the section AA and the access frame and cover. It kind of looks like soil right up against it.
Yeah, agreed. I think that was a good change. So, but that was all I really saw on this. Minus maybe scaling back some of the hatching. It just looked kind of dark from, just looking at it, just looked kind of dark. Other than that, Carl, your guys did a very good job. Thank you for the help on that.
If you go down to the next to the ones that our structural engineer marked up, Gordon, I could probably, I was going to cloud my detail, but I didn't. If you see the section BV, we've added rebar into the bottom of the wing, and in some of the walls there, which I think is maybe a conservative, but however, there could be a case where you have poor soil conditions or washouts where you want structural support of the wing there. Where we added rebar in the bottom part of it. And that's really the only structural change. Everything else is kind of a little more clarity, calling out some of the bars that might not be obvious, a little bit cleaner way of dimensioning.
Okay. So, but yeah, that was the gist of this case, basically taking the city of Phoenix detail and throwing a mag border around it.
I already got our thing to you guys about a week ago, so you haven't probably had enough to. Some of you may not have taken a good look at this, so I don't think at this point we want to try and vote on it, but maybe by next month we could talk about it at the working group too.
I think that's good. Yeah, this is a good good step. So does anybody see anything? There's any comments, concerns?
One other thing, when you make the updates, you might want to make the text in the title block the same as the second drawing instead of this Roman.
Okay. Oh, by the way, Carl, can you send me that CAD file and I can take it from here? You guys did the bulk of the work. I really appreciate that.
We're working in MicroStation, so we can't get exact mag drafting standards when it comes to some of those things. So yeah, we'd be happy to send you the CAD files.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, not hearing any other comments on 2105. If we can move down to item number 7, it's case 2106. It's the proposed new detail 272 retrofit manhole valve box realignment based on the city of Chandler detail. Warren, you've got this one?
Thanks, Craig. Hello, everyone. As Craig mentioned, this is a new detail for retrofitting manholes or valves in curbs, whether it's an outer curb or the median curb. And really haven't had too many comments in a couple months. This has been discussed in the water sewer working group. Unless there is anything new or anything to discuss now, I'd move to accept the case as presented.
Yeah, and it's definitely up for action. So, is there any other comments on this? Not hearing any, Warren. Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Jim. Can I get a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, Avondale.
Yes.
Buckeye is a yes. Chandler.
Yes.
Thank you. El Mirage is not present. Gilbert.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. Thank you. Glendale.
Yes.
Goodyear.
Yes.
Yes. Oops.
Maricopa County.
Yes.
Mesa.
Yes.
Peoria.
Yes.
Phoenix.
Al Smolko, yes.
Thank you. Scottsdale. Not present. Surprise.
Yes.
Tempe.
Yes.
And Youngtown. Not present. All righty. Motion carries. Case 2106. Detail 272 is approved. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Warren. That was excellent. So if we can move on to item number 8, case 2108, proposed new curb cut details. These are the 226-1, 226-2 for the low impact development that the outside of right-of-way working group is working. Alan, are you sponsoring this one?
Mute. Yes. We
Okay.
did this with Keith.
Okay. Do you have any updates, or is this basically the same as we had the last time?
Got the right one there?
Yeah, Keith sent me an update that just fixed a few typographic issues.
Oh, okay. It looks different, that's all. Yeah, I had no comments on this.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
Hey, Alan, this is Warren. I had one question internally, and maybe it's accounted for here, is if we had a roll curb situation, is there anything that we note as a transition or anything in that case? Use this in a roll curb?
I'm not sure about that, but if you look at type 2 profile where it goes down, it seems like if you had a roll curb, it would be not a straight line. It'd kind of follow. I don't think it's detailed like that,
Okay.
but I don't see any objections to a roll curb.
I would wonder if it was a roll curb, if you wouldn't have, you know, assuming that in areas where you're going to have 6-inch curb, you're going to have drainage issues. And typically where you've got vertical curb, you're on a more major road, where local roads are typically the only thing that has roll curb. I don't know if that would be the case.
Yeah, probably. Then you have to look at, my cursor doesn't work on the screen here, but where you've got that vertical curve and you've got that transition where you just go down on the slope, you'd almost want to do that almost like a radius or something. So depending on your sections or your how you pour the roll curb, it may be a different transition that wouldn't look good. So you'd have to basically just, you wouldn't want to do it on a radius. You just kind of flatten it, you know.
I would almost think that would be a separate detail.
It'd probably be suggestible that would, you'd want to look at something before you let a contractor go on it.
Yeah, because that's going to change quite a bit of what's drawn here.
Yeah, definitely not intending for that. And like you said, Craig, primarily vertical curb drainage situations. But if there was a need, I guess that'd be something we could add later.
I think so. I think so.
Since roll curb isn't called out on this, I think this detail could stand as it is. And then if someone had a roll curb, you know, maybe you'd look at that individual element.
This is Peter. I'm looking at the pictures of the examples. I can't find any using a roll curb. I think it was meant for vertical curb.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, Peter, is you know, you're going to see this basically, you're not going to see it in a subdivision. Let's just put it that way.
No, I'm not seeing any of those in the examples at all.
I think Meg has a vertical curb to roll curb transition detail anyway that you could use if you had to.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gordon. I was wondering about that. Is it that was an additional note if needed, or just as needed in the field?
So Gordon, I guess kind of what you're saying there is if you really needed to, you could transition from roll curb to vertical, install this curb cut detail, and then transition back out into roll curb.
Yeah, I think that's what I was suggesting. I don't know if that's a good practice or not. But.
Yeah, I see it. I think the challenge there is your roll curb is only 4 inches tall and your vertical curb is 6 inches tall. So that's going to reflect back into any sidewalk or anything that you got behind also. But
good point.
It definitely, you know, something that can be looked at.
Yeah, I'm really questioning if you would want to have a roll curb where you've got that kind of landscaping sitting right behind it. Because this is going into a landscaped area.
Right. So. But.
I have a question there. Under what speeds would you be using this, and would it be a concern with a tire hitting this at a weird angle?
You're talking like type 4, the isometric view, where you might be hitting the point off of that.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
It may be a valid comment. I'm not sure about the speeds on this, but it was really developed for the low impact development. So I'm not sure if speed was a factor in this detail or not.
So I guess if your speeds are a little too high, you could always go to a type 3 isometric view where you've got a little transition, little taper to it. I don't know what the difference between the type 2, type 3 would be or where they would be used. So
I'm not sure either, but it seems like since there's different types, um, that may be where you have a, I don't want to say controlled area, maybe like a light rail or something where vehicles are not leaving the pavement or would hit that more so, but you still allow for that um, drainage water, if you will, to go into the landscape versus actually having an impact of a potential tire or a bike or something like that. The type 4 doesn't seem like you'd want to do that where you could possibly hit the, hit it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure the type 4 is, I don't know if I like that. Those sharp ends are gonna get busted off all the time. So.
Mm-hmm. I was just getting ready to say that the type 3 just seems like it would be more a more friendly version of the opening.
Yeah, I don't like the type 4. Then again, this is a construction spec. We don't need to, get into design, whether it's to be used in certain, situations or not. So I don't know. I don't like 4. To me, those sharp ends are just going to get broken off. So
Is it meant to be more hydraulically efficient with that angle?
I am not sure. Keith kind of put this together with what they've been seeing and with the low impact development. Again, I think the type 4 situation would be where maybe traffic is coming, let's say left to right. So you wouldn't be hitting that one point, but it would still allow however the water flows into the opening. So again, like a fixed rail vehicle, you're looking at a median area where traffic is going, toward the, away from the point, if you will. So it's not really an impact, but I can see where if you have a sharp edge there, it could be sheared off. It could be hit if someone's going the wrong way. It's possible that would be that should be modified to be rounded at some point.
Yeah, and the flow arrow down there on the type 4, that just kind of suggests that everything is, your opening is basically in the direction of the flow, not necessarily traffic, but
yeah.
Again, why these don't need to be that efficient. It's just going to be a little bit of drainage. It's nuisance drainage more that goes into these.
I think I'd agree. I've been looking at these details and I'm seeing 4 different types, which seems like it might be a little bit of overkill on what we're trying to accomplish here. And when I look at each of these, type 4 seems to be the one that makes the least amount of sense from a long-term maintenance standpoint. I agree we're going to end up with curbs that are going to have issues being broken, fractured off, whatnot. And from an efficiency standpoint, I don't know that really provides you any more efficiency than the, type 2 detail. I don't know that there's any more efficiency to that.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little curious about type 1 versus type 2. Are they the same type? I'm just looking at the profile view of type 1.
Looks like type 1 doesn't have the actual curb. It's just it to me, it just looks like it's gutter, where the type 2's got a gutter to it. If I'm seeing that correctly, if I'm looking at that right.
No, there's a curb there. But I'm not seeing the difference. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is it?
I thought maybe it's just a type 1 profile view as opposed to A new type.
See, I do think these details could use a little more refinement. The when I look at type 1, what I'm seeing, referring to note 4 there in the notes section, it notes to grind to form a 2-inch depression from lip of gutter. So to me, type 1 involves a little bit more work where you're depressing the gutter, which will increase the efficiency of the capture. Whereas type 2, the detail's pretty limited in what it shows, but I've interpreted that as a curb and gutter where the curb just terminates. It's pretty much a standard curb and gutter, but you just have a 6-inch termination on each end and a 24-inch opening in the curb. So a real simple version often would be found in retrofits, whereas type 1 is a little bit more intricate with depressing the gutter and pan in front of the opening and doing some other things.
Yeah, where the type 1 looks like it's like a profile. You can see the cut section through the plan view, where type 2 is not that section. It looks like it's a straight on version, looking at it from the street out. So just a standard curb opening.
It appears though that this is more of a retrofit, because on note number 2 it says to drill an epoxy in the rebar, and then each one is saw cut. So it's like if this was brand new, right? Like, you know, new curb and gutter, then you wouldn't want to saw cut everything. You just want to form it and hand tool it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the details ought to be, I think there needs to be a little bit more work on these, as far as there's enough questions being asked about how does type 1 work or how does type 2 work. I think the details could be cleaned up a little bit where the intent is a little bit cleaner. And I would agree with the last comment there that it appears like these were designed originally for retrofits, because that's mostly what we're doing today, is trying to retrofit existing infrastructure. But we want to either identify them as retrofits or design them to be installed new. And I'd agree, in like type 1, you wouldn't have it doweled, you'd have it intricately poured and formed.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I think we ought to put some kind of labels on these for how they would be and if it would be new construction versus retrofit. So I'll get back with Keith on these. If you guys can just send some comments in, like we've talked about today, and then we'll try to get this corrected for next time.
Yeah, and this, Peter, I'm taking notes also, and I'll send something up to Keith.
And we also will have this meeting posted on YouTube if you want to review the comments that were made now.
So,
Okay, thanks.
any other comments on this? Not hearing any. If we can move on to item number 9. Case 2109. That's revising details 419-2, the polymer, and 420-2, the precast manhole bases. Showing the longer pup coming out of the manhole, just to avoid conflicts. Matt, do you want to take this? Or is Matt on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. There you go. Yes.
Yeah, everything on our end looks good. I like what I'm seeing. I don't know if there was anything that you had, but I think everything up to this point looks very good.
Yeah, and just kind of for everybody, we had the Clay Pipe Association, the president of the Clay Pipe Association, come through, and he was actually the one that redlined this and made some of the changes. So this is all basically out of the NCPI manual. So
Yeah, I wanted to mention also that 420-2 was the one that you saw last month. And the only change to that one was during the working group meeting. I think Jim suggested making 24 inches kind of the minimum distance here, because there wasn't a minimum. And without any minimum, you might have the same problem where you had the interference before. So that was added to this one. But the other issue that the guy from the Clay Pipe Association brought up was that this other detail 419-2 for the polymer manhole base basically would need the same changes made. And so that's what these marked up things are, is basically the same changes for the polymer base.
Okay. Okay. So sounds good. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you for all your help on that one, Gordon, too. Thank you.
Sure.
It specifically says to use vitrified clay pipe. Is that the only pipe that everyone's using?
So the intent of this is, if you look at the top of the manhole there, we've got one side showing clay pipe and the other side showing other pipe types. Being that clay is a little, being clay is a little bit more finicky, then we've got to do a couple extra things for that. But we did try to break it out so it was clear as to, a clay and anything other than clay.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Any other questions? So Matt, I don't want to speak for you, but since we're not really hearing anything, we've gone through this a couple of times, through the working group a couple of times. You want to set it up for action for next month?
That sounds great. I think it's ready to go.
I agree with that. So yeah, Gordon, if we can put this on the agenda next time for action.
Okay.
So, but thank you, Matt. Excellent work.
Thank you as well, Greg and Gordon.
Yes.
Craig, is the only change on this on the vitrified clay pipe side? There's no other changes to this detail?
That's correct. And if, I don't know if Gordon can kind of hover over the joint for the clay pipe. That was the biggest problem. If you notice how the joint, it descends below what that anti-flotation ring is right there. So what we had on there before is a 1 foot. So with 8-inch pipe, we didn't have this issue, but anytime you got any larger diameter pipe, the outside diameter of that bell was in conflict with that anti-flotation ring.
Right.
So talking with NCPI, they were like, hey, we can go up to 36 inches. We just have to have 2 points of flexibility within 36 inches. So the boot at the manhole being one and the joint within 3 feet being the other. So we meet all of their standards, and that actually solved the issue as well, that we're having conflicts with the anti-flotation ring.
There was one other change that he made, was correcting some of the references to ASTMs. And so if you look at note 11 here and here, it's both pointing to the joints or the resilient connectors. So this was corrected for, I guess you could say, both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So, all right. Well, if there's no other questions, we can move on to item number 10. That'd be case 2110, revising section 776, the masonry mortar and grout. Update allows commercial ready mixed grout and factory pre-blended options, rewording of the cementitious materials, and ASTM updates. Jeff, are you on?
I am.
Take it away.
I've gotten no comments, Craig.
Okay.
Unless anyone has any other comments, I'd like to put it up for a vote in August.
Are there any other comments out there? Not hearing any. I think we can definitely do that. Put that up for action next month.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, moving on. Item number 11, case 2111, revising section 611 to add requirements for potable water hauling. I know that the water and sewer working group been working on this for a while. Addition of potable water hauling requirements adding sections from the AAC statute. Jim?
Yeah, I haven't had time to revise this. I'm going to try to get something for the working group this month. So
Okay.
I just got to sort out what specs are being referenced and make sure that's, everything lines up with what the AAC says, and then this other environmental health code says. So.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions on it? Okay. Well, look forward to working on this in the working group. Thank you, Jim. Moving on to item number 12. Case 21-12, revised section 601 to add minimum testing frequencies. Summarizing just testing frequencies for trenching compaction testing. Jim, this is yours too, but I believe Rob was the one handling it, right? Is he on?
Yeah, he's on, worked on. We didn't do too many, just did some small revisions, I think, right, Rob? That's about it.
Yeah, that's correct. There's not many changes since the table. In fact, nothing's been changed on the table for a while. It was some potholing language that Rob Duvall of Phoenix wanted to add, so he's piggybacked onto us. And after talking to some other people about the potholing language, I kind of took everyone's comments, and that's what you see just above the table with the potholing. This kind of meets the intent about who chooses locations and when it's done.
Okay.
And I put a little bit in there above that, just about where this foundation is scarified, just the contractor to go back and compact it. And I talked to somebody from one of the private labs and figured that would probably be enough, just having someone go back to compact the foundation without getting lost in the weeds about, what kind of compaction you bring it to, or if you go back in there and test it. It's difficult because the moisture may not be there, and it could open up a can of worms. So it's kind of just a methodology just to have the contractor, if they over excavate or if they scarify, just go back and compact it and leave it at that. And the other thing is bedding, too, in here. Bedding was always kind of thought it could be clarified at first. Looking at the bedding information in here, I think it's best to leave it like it is for now.
Okay.
There was
one thing we did is clarify this over excavation. It was unclear what's considered over excavation. So we wanted to, when a excavator and the bucket dig the trench for the foundation before they put the bedding material in, they got teeth on the bucket, and that sometimes, it kind of, scarifies to a certain depth and so what we wanted to do is if you got somebody who's maybe not good on the equipment and it gets, over excavates, that could be a problem. And so this way you got some clarification that, if they're digging it up more than 2 inches deep, then that's a problem, and they need to look at it and recompact it. So that's kind of, we wanted to clean that up. It wasn't really clear on the original mag. So that's why that was added. So.
And it sounds like the intent is just to recompact it. We're not looking for a specific density, just, tighten up the foundation before you put your bedding in. Is that the intent?
Right.
Yeah,
and if they
exactly.
do major over excavation, then, in the current mag, they gotta replace it with AB and compact that.
Okay.
Yeah, like Jim's saying, that was the language. The language says over excavate, and then you replace it with ABC. My question is, what do you do if it's a scarified or loosened? You wouldn't really, you could be chasing it to replace it with ABC. It wouldn't be practical. So if they over excavate it, if they do dig it a little bit deeper than they're supposed to, they're normally going to put ABC back in anyways. But that was just concern that we never really addressed it being scarified with the teeth going in. Figured maybe a couple 2 sounds reasonable, but I've seen guys over loosen it 4 or 5 inches deep,
Mm-hmm.
and they should really compact that. And some of the contractors I've talked to just do it on their own, but some won't. And then we have concern about the sagging of the flexible pipe. You know, sewer pipe, we may have some video failures later if they don't do it. So it's in their interest to always compact it if they do scarify it. I just thought it might made sense to have something in there we could, as an inspector, you know, could point that out if we saw it.
Yeah, that's good to be able to say, hey, you know, you're loosening it up, just tighten it up a little bit. There's not a really requirement, just saying make it flat and tighten it up. Nope.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is Warren. I agree. That's a great addition, Rob.
Good.
Well, we've just seen some really sloppy excavation, to be honest with you, and it's just, you know, this is getting, you know, we need to address that. You know, some of these guys are over excavating, and so then it comes down to the inspector interpreting, you know, well, you know, maybe you need to bring in AB. So this way, we just wanted to clean it up a bit. So.
No, this is good.
Well, this is Peter, the anal geotechnical engineer, looking at this going, do you want to include moisture condition or moisten?
Of the foundation?
Well, just the idea where you're going to recompact. I hate seeing dust recompacted dry.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking. If you have them go back and compact it, and if you spell out a certain compaction, you know, native compaction is like 85%.
Yeah.
They can get that, but if we start processing it and then we're getting testing, it would. I didn't want to get too deep in the weeds with it. But I know what you're saying, Peter. I agree. I mean, you're compacting dry material, but at least there's some kind of effort to do something.
Yeah, I grab that. I didn't know if you want to add just the language, you know, shall moisten and recompact.
That's a good point about moisturizing it.
Yeah, don't even have to go to moisture conditioning, just moisten. Just get some water in there.
Rob, this is Arvid. On that kind of that same note, that section where you talked about potholing.
Oh yeah.
Back to that, Gordon. There, when you talk about potholing, and I've actually done this before, do you want to consider looking at the two primary methods of potholing, that being air excavation and hydro excavation? And the reason I bring that up is because if you start going out with a ditch witch or a Vermeer hydro excavator using a water lance to cut the pothole to look at the soils, you're going to end up having a muddy environment. And how are you going to see the layers of the compaction? So when we've done this before, we've gone out with an air excavation unit because the air is not introducing moisture into the soil and thereby changing it and kind of making it difficult to see where the different lenses are.
On that, Arvid, do you get into a dust issue then?
No, the industry itself has on the trucks that are used, even on the small trailer mounted ones, they have the filters on them. So it's not a dust issue. And the purpose of this potholing is not for finding a utility, it's so that you can see the different layers of the backfill process. And if you introduce that with water, if you excavate that with water, you might find yourself looking down a hole that's all the same color. And now you've introduced moisture into it. And can you really see all the lenses? Whereas if you do it with air, you can cut that hole down and you'll start to see the change in the soil condition from the air lens.
Isn't most of this potholing, though, this what we're referring to here, is done with just a backhoe?
And that's what I wanted to clarify with you. If it's done with a backhoe, that's one thing. But when you say potholing in today's world, typically you're going to think of vacuum potholing truck.
Well, maybe we can clarify it's got to be dry or air potholing.
That or just excavating.
Yeah, water cannot be used for it or something like that.
Because, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. Could you start using a hydro excavator to dig down 10 feet to see the different layers? All you're doing is adding water, and you're going to basically completely change the environment of the entire pothole.
You got to get a nuke gauge down there, so it's not going to be that deep. It's going to be something to where the tech can get his gauge down in there.
Yeah.
Agreed. But you want water in that environment?
No.
Yeah, you don't. That's why you need to specify if it's not going to be an excavated hole, then you need to use air excavation or air potholing techniques.
Yeah, maybe in the second sentence there, Rob, we'll say potholing shall be done by mechanical or air methods.
No hydro. Just add no hydro.
Yeah, no hydro.
Would it,
During done full-time observation of the engineer. So maybe add that after the first word in the second sentence there.
so would it be also worth maybe just see if we can come up with a different word to replace potholing? If potholing is what's actually causing the issue, can we come up with a different term other than just potholing?
Well, the alternative term is excavate. So just excavate to expose previously compacted lifts to obtain compaction test is allowed.
Yeah, we could do that.
Provide all excavation locations and depths are selected by the engineer. Excavation shall be done during the full-time observation of the engineer and the technician. No hydro excavation will be allowed.
So I guess if we do that, then that solves a lot of the problems.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. It takes it out of the equation. And then if they do want to use a vacuum, an air excavation vacuum truck to do the potholing, that's fine. But at least it's an air system and not a hydro. You got to put no hydro in there, because in today's world, potholing goes immediately to air or hydro, and hydro is still something that's highly used for potholing. You don't want someone with a Vermeer trailer potholing into the ground with their water lance. That's going to completely change your environment.
Yeah. I was thinking of Traco or backhoe, some kind of excavator when they pothole.
Right, but in today's market, almost everybody owns a Vermeer or a Ditch Witch trailer pulled potholing rig that's got a hydro lance on it, and the first thing they're going to do is take that hydro lance and cut you a hole in the ground, and then you're going to be like, well, I can't use that.
Oh, yeah.
But the spec says pothole. So what do you mean I can't?
So I just looked at one of my specs. We call them test pits.
There you go.
Test pits. There you go.
Yeah, test pits. There you go. Yeah. So test pits to expose previously, but there again, I think you need to add in the verbs. No hydro excavating allowed, because air excavating and hydro excavating are more of the industry standard terminologies that we see nowadays, because both hydro and air excavating are becoming more common for street crossings and just used widely because of the concern of damaging existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in this case, though, I think, if we use an air lance or a hydro lance, you're not going to get the size of hole that you're going to need to get a nuke gauge in there. And you need somewhat of a flat surface.
Correct.
Yeah. Arvid, the more the concern was this: contractors will dig a pothole for you, or they'll come in and dig 2 or 3 holes, different depths. But just so there's no question of what's happening, it needs to be done in the presence of the technician or the engineer, and also the engineer or the technician need to be the one to say, you guys have got this backfilled. I want 3 potholes over here at this depth.
Right.
A random location kind of thing. And that's true. I didn't think about the potholing, the definitions you're saying.
Yes, and that's all I'm saying is in today's world, the word potholing is more broadly used and accepted, and it defines a methodology. So if you go to test pits, change potholing to test pits, and then somewhere in there, just make sure you add the phrase no hydro excavating will be allowed. Okay. That way you're completely covered and you don't have to worry about anybody saying, well, why can't I use my hydro truck?
Yeah, maybe we can make it excavating test pits and use the 2 terms in there interchangeably without to clarify it. I've never had anyone that I can recall trying to use any other method to test, to provide a pothole to test compaction, but I guess it could happen.
Well, when it does happen, you'll be ready for
it. Yeah.
That's the whole point.
They're going to say, well, Mag doesn't say,
Exactly. Yeah. And you're like, no, it does. I wrote it myself.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm glad you put that in there or mentioned that about no hydro. Just no hydro.
No hydro excavating.
Excavating. Okay.
Yeah, no hydro excavating. And then you've crossed the T's and dotted the I's and you're done.
So if we called it a mechanically excavated test hole.
There you go. That even narrows it down even better.
So we're not saying, okay, you can't use an air lance, you can't use a water lance. You are going to use something that is mechanical to excavate.
Sounds like a winner.
Okay.
Rob, this is Peter. I just sent you some language that we've used for some other specs. I just emailed it to you. Maybe that'll help.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
This is an amalgam of 4 or 5 people's comments. So it's a combination. This will be good to clarify it.
Good dialogue, though.
All right,
Yeah, it
yeah, Rob, so let's get that revised for the next working group meeting. And I don't know, any other comments? I know we vetted it pretty good. We had pretty good response from everybody, so.
And what's nice with this one, Jim, is, you know, we've also created somewhat of a semi working group for this case specifically, and we've got industry involved, and Rob's doing a fantastic job on all this. So, I mean, this is a culmination of a huge amount of data.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. It creates a baseline. That's the thing, is that there wasn't really a baseline for either the consultants, you know, to prepare their bids. And so this kind of just gives an idea of you know, we get some baseline for testing.
Yes.
Again, you know, it depends. If you got, depends on the material, depends on the circumstances, depends on the contractor. You know, it can be varied a little bit, and that's what the inspector can do. But you got to have a baseline. And that was really what drove the start of this, is that we need a starting point.
It's also been run through 2 of the working groups, in addition to the subgroup that was working on it. So
yeah, so
it's got a lot of vetting.
Yes.
Yeah. I've gotten feedback in each group, which is really good. It means it's come a long ways, definitely.
And very needed.
So I don't see anybody else. Any other comments?
Jim, this is Brian. I got a few comments from contractors that I need to get to you. The first one is just above the table. If who's ever controlling it, they scroll up. They called for the backfill of deep trenches, the engineer may require additional measures such as the use of CLSM or full-time monitoring of compacted effort. I'm getting comments in regards to the engineer having that ability, and how does a contractor bid that at the engineer's discretion or reserves the right?
Well, it's come out of some situations I've seen way back in the past where we've had settlement for some really deep backfills, and the city I was with at the time didn't have the money to afford full-time observation. They actually had someone maybe 20 hours a week observing the backfill, and it was a major issue with settlement later. I think they still have settlement issues 15 years later. And that's had a situation now where we got our project, 22 feet deep of backfill, and every time I pulled up, I had some concerns about the backfill methods, and I could not require the lab to be there full time. And it's harder to get some safety shoring for someone to get in there and test that deep. So I think it'd be good for agencies to have the ability to require a full-time observation, or maybe slurry deeper sections. So it's kind of in there as something that I think agencies should have the ability to do. And it's,
Well, I see Brian's point though too, from a contractor's perspective. So if we took that out and we just said, well, you got to follow the table, then what are they going to do for the deep stuff? They're going to have to provide shoring and get people in there safely then. So I think the intent, Brian, was to say, well, if it's too deep and you don't, they don't want to pay for some extra shoring, or the lab guy won't go in there, the only other option is a CLSM. So maybe we can reword that, or just tell the contractor, whatever you got to do to get the guy in there safely to test it, you got to do it. So,
so typically the contractor provides the assumptions and the exclusions within their contracts. And so if they put in the assumption, on these deeper digs, what they assume, then, and if there's something else that's required, then they can charge for a change order. I don't think it's possible to to include all possibilities
And I
without
would agree, none of this is
becoming too
saying at the
much.
contractor's expense.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, the intent of this is the backfill all needs to be tested, and how we can get a lab guy in the hole is going to be based on, just OSHA safety practices. So if you've got a 22-foot ditch and you've got to get somebody down 22 feet, then the contractor is going to be responsible for making it safe for that guy to get down in that hole.
And I think that's reasonable if you're talking, this is what's on the plans. They can obviously see they've got a deep excavation contractor will, at their cost, make accommodations to get in. I agree with those where it says they can modify the testing based on field conditions and materials, being that at the contractor's expense. If they know going into it, hey, we've got a 22 feet deep excavation and you're going to have to account for it, great. They can accommodate that in their bids. But if it's done during the process, that's where the challenge is on paying for it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Rob, this testing table doesn't have a range, right? For, trenches, from say 4 feet deep to 12 feet, right? It can be, you could technically or feasibly use it for a deep trench, correct?
Yeah, there's no depths on there, but I thought it was something we should address, because initially I was thinking if we'd have deeper areas, we should have more testing done. Talking with someone from the county a while back in one of the meetings, they said they had some kind of internal SOP where the deeper areas, they were requiring monitoring but fewer tests. But I did want to put something on the table, and that's kind of why I put the footnote to say, hey, look, deep areas, every agency has, we all had to be assured that it's being done properly. And each agency may be able to, require full-time observation or something. And maybe fewer tests is the way to go. If you had full-time observation of the deep backfill, a technician could stand there and watch the contractor's means and methods, the rolling pattern, and I guess an engineer would have to write some kind of means and methods spec. I've seen that done in the past where they had too much rock. There's too much rock to test for the nuclear gauge, but they spent 2 weeks watching them backfill this 25-foot deep trench with rocky material, and the geotech engineer basically wrote a spec, and they signed off that it was compacted and backfilled according to the way they suggested. That was kind of one of those unusual situations, but I just know it's, I think we have more issues with deep failures, especially around manholes, things like that. And it's got to be some way for us to address them. I know slurry is expensive, but so is full-time observation too.
Yeah, and as I start reading, I understand where Brian's coming from, and Peter's kind of on the same. We've got an item right there on the screen, the sewer, water, and storm final backfill. This is what we're talking about. It's the final backfill above the pipe zone. Is one test per lift per pipe run. So we're not going to have really deep water typically.
No.
There's always going to be the anomalies, but typically we're not going to have really deep water. We're not going to have really deep storm drain typically. It's sewer that's mostly the case, but still, if we are testing one test per lift per pipe run, deeper sewer, I'm thinking 12-inch, 16-inch, down to 24 feet, 25 feet. If we're still testing one lift per pipe run, or one test per lift per pipe run, you're still going to get, on a 400-foot pipe run, you're still going to get 25 tests if you're 25 feet deep.
Right.
So I'm reading some of the paragraphs prior to this, and this gets into the concept of submittal of means and methods, where I think you may be benefited by getting that information in advance. So this is known in advance. What are you going to do? How are the means and methods going to be done to accomplish that for the specific job? If it's a simple job, it may be just very straightforward. But on these more complex jobs, you may need to know the means and methods in advance and have some working plan. And I'm wondering if the paragraphs before that could be modified.
Well, I think we need to at least some of these, because I agree with kind of the concerns of Brian, is that, you know, you're gonna get some inspector out there and says, this is too deep, you got to use slurry. You know, that's a big surprise. Not, you know, I say there's a cost there, but I mean, it's just it's a surprise of it, not planned ahead. So again, maybe some parameters need to be set, you know, so when they know, well, look, if this is anything deeper than, you know, 12 or 15 feet, you know, we're going to have to look at it closer.
What we'd have the contractor submit their means and methods for deeper backfill?
I don't know.
Possibly.
I don't know, Brian, do you have any suggestions how you would like to reword this?
Well, I mean, everything that you guys have talked about, I mean, would work if you wanted, if you wanted slurry after a certain depth. I mean, we just need to state that. So then contractors know that if it gets over 13 feet or whatever, that you're going to require slurry. I thought originally when we started this, Jim, way back when, we were gonna, if they were gonna use native, we were gonna do more testing, but then eliminate the testing if they were going to use CLSM to give them that choice, to kind of make them go that direction, especially at these greater depths. So, but I just think open-ended right here, it just leaves it for, unless you want to end this sentence with all CLSM will be paid by the owner, and then you guys can decide whether you guys want to pay for it or not.
Brian, that works for CIP projects, but not for development projects.
Yeah.
But I totally see where you're coming from. And you know, would this be also worth something saying, you know, for trenches that are in excess of 22 feet, then we double the testing. So instead of testing the initial or the final backfill, one test per lift per pipe run, we go 2 tests per lift per pipe run. Is that something that maybe could be something to meet in the middle?
Well, there's a couple of things. So there's a footnote that says, you know, ABC is used for the final backfill. Testing may be decreased to every other lift with agency approval. So that's something we talked about initially, doing 2 different tables, and then it made sense since the main change was where ABC is used, just to make a footnote. So instead of every 1 foot lift, you can do every other 1 foot lift for ABC backfill. But the other thing, it's already existing in MAG, up a sheet ahead, a page ahead, says when backfill material is CLSM and is placed in accordance with section 604, no compaction testing is required. The compaction density shall be deemed acceptable. So that's already in there. If slurry is used, everyone knows it's not being tested. I don't know if we need. I mean, I thought about making the note in the table to that, but I figured it's already in MAG.
Yeah, I think the thought on that was if we're just doing standard native backfill out in a subdivision, you know, we're 27 feet deep, whatever it's going to be. Because of the depth, I understand your concern, and I'm there with you on your concern. But because of the depth, you know, let's just double up on our testing. The slurry is going to be, you know, I think that's going to be confrontational, controversial if it's not talked about up front. You know, if a contractor comes in and, you know, kind of blindsided on it.
Or we do like Brian said, is just say, look, anything deeper, say, than 15, whatever, 12 feet, 15, whatever we agree on, you got to use CLSM. Or, you know, the contractor can submit an alternate plan. That's what we do right now with our spec, because we have a CLSM spec around manholes. And so we offer that choice. If they don't want to follow that, you know, they need to submit an alternate plan. And a lot of times that involves a full-time tester out there. So, I think, we got to stay, look, if it's deeper than this, you got to use this. Otherwise, you can submit an alternate plan for review by the agency or engineer.
And that works for private development, capital improvement, all projects, right?
Yeah. So that way, and we've had, developers say, oh, we don't want to pay for the slurry. I said, well, what do you propose? And they go, well, we'll use ABC, and we'll test it, and we'll have a full-time tester out there. So we have on occasion, accepted some of the alternate stuff that they submit. We've even had a couple of them just backfill it and then go back and recompact it, and then go back and actually put just a slurry, only like 2-3 foot around the manhole. So they get creative, but we're getting a better backfill. But again, we told them up front, here's the minimum, and then but you can, if you want to submit something else, an alternate plan, we'll look at that. So that way, when the contractor reads the spec here, you can say, well, look, we'll follow the spec, when he gives his price to the developer, but it's going to be expensive because of this. But if we can submit a plan, and again, it can get pre-approved, then there's no surprises. So,
Yeah, I really like that idea because it puts the ability of the contractor to put innovation into a job and get compensated properly for it.
Yeah, and we've seen that. So we've kind of tested this already in Avondale and in certain areas, and it's worked. We say, well, an alternate plan, and so they get creative, and the owner buys off on it, or the developer, so because they're paying for it, but at least they have that choice to up front, so there's no surprises. And like I said, a lot of them do suggested the full-time tester, so apparently that's cheaper than the slurry. So.
I think that's a great idea.
So we need to reword that. I agree. So
Do you think we ought to go deeper backfill, gets CLSM automatically, or plan from the contractor basically?
no, you just say anything deeper, you got to use CLSM, unless the contractor wants to submit an alternate plan that can be pre-approved by the engineer agency.
So that's on note number 5 at the bottom, right?
Yeah, but you see, that says may. We need to clarify,
Okay.
so you will use
Yeah.
it, and then or you submit an alternate plan that has to be pre-approved.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So basically, the note was just kind of, we talked about the deep backfill, and I figured it was a good way just to put the concern out there, and then let agencies choose what they thought was going to be best without requiring it.
yeah, but you don't want that decision to be made and out in the field. It needs to be done before. So
Okay.
because again, that's at the whim of the inspector. Well, I think I want to use CLSM here. So you don't want that surprise when the contractor's already out on the site. So this way, if you just say, look, you will use CLSM after a certain depth, or you submit an alternate plan, and so then you get that pre-approved, before they start working. So. And again, you give them the freedom to decide what means and methods they want in lieu of, or they do the slurry, whatever. So.
I agree.
So you're saying to change that note number 5, so instead of may, it says a will require additional effort, and then add in or and or have submit a means and methods of approval approved by the engineer.
Yeah, along that line, or they just do test it for the table, and it's up to them to figure out how to do that.
So one thought I have on this is this specification here is intended to be a testing specification, frequencies and whatnot. And it sounds like we're trying to start to evolve the specification into a backfill specification on deep trenches. So if we're going to specify CLSM for any trench over 12 feet or 15 feet or whatever is decided, I think that goes in a different section on trench backfilling area, if that's going to be the standard. And then this section here should just focus on testing requirements. And anytime CLSM is used, the testing isn't required. That's already stated in there. And if it's not, then the testing is required. I think we need to isolate those two thoughts a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ryan. So. And yeah, I think we're getting we're getting too much into means and methods. So some of this stuff I think we just need to take out, and it can be maybe a separate case for the backfill. Just concentrate on the testing here.
Yeah.
Not worry about the deep stuff yet. I mean, it's
Yeah.
again, they got to test it, whatever it is, 5 feet deep or 15 feet or 25 feet deep, and leave it at that for now, and then look at the backfill requirements separately.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still recommend that the note above be clarified in terms of a means and method for meeting these requirements to allow testing to be done. So again, the game plan going on in, contractor knows what they're getting into, what they have to do, and how they're getting compensated. If anything changes, they can go back for a change order.
And I think that's a fair comment. And I don't know if it's written elsewhere already, but certainly it should state in here that the contractor is responsible for providing all means and methods for the testing to be completed, including safety precautions for the testing personnel.
Yeah, leave it up to them.
And that way they can build
here's the
price.
testing frequencies, and then here's the testing frequencies, and you figure out how you're going to do it. So.
Yeah, then they can build it into their pricing.
Yeah. I believe that's been the intent forever is, however you do it, you got to do it safely. OSHA covers us on that.
Yeah, true.
I think the key is that the contractor is responsible for providing the safety precautions, though, as opposed to the testing agency themselves providing their own shoring or other safety precautions. So I think delineating not what the safety precaution is, but whose responsibility it is to provide it.
I almost want to say that would be understood because, I mean, if I put myself in the place of a lab tech, you want me to test your 25-foot trench, but you're not going to put any safety measures around there. I'm not going down there to test it. And you're not going to backfill it until you provide some safety measures for me to get down there.
Yeah, and then they continue on, and then we're back to, potholing. All right, no, this is a good discussion. I think, we need to take some of this stuff out of here and then reword it, get out of means and methods and backfill types, and just stick to the testing requirements. So.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are taking me back to what I did 40 years ago. It's a little different then.
Yeah.
So then do you modify the backfill spec then? Is that
we will, but it'll be a separate case.
Okay.
So maybe next year we can tackle that more.
Yeah, that's the thing we find with these things, when they grow legs and you end up going to this spec and changing this. It gets kind of unwieldy. So you gotta. That's what I appreciate, Ryan. Thank you. You need somebody to say, hey, we need to refocus on what we're trying to do, what the case is really about. So I appreciate that, Ryan.
Yeah, great discussion. Thank you, everybody.
And Brian too. That was a good comment. So.
So,
all right, we'll work on the narrative part of this.
All right. Great discussion again. So we'll move on to item number 13, case number 2113. New detail 227, the sediment traps. Proposed new detail 227, sediment traps from the low impact development handbook. Bashan? Are you out there? Bashar?
Yeah, so this is Eric Bonds. Um, work with Bashir there.
Okay.
And Peter, I'm here too if any support's needed to explain some of this. So however you guys want to do that.
All right. So yeah, I'm just gonna give a quick description of it there for you guys. Yeah, the sediment traps here are essentially a spillway detail where at the bottom of this spillway is a concrete pad area in which to remove sediment that builds up, and it aims to also dissipate the flow coming down off of the spillway there. So this is a low impact development device here. There are two different options here. One is is for a concrete spillway, and the other is for a riprap spillway. Calls for a curb opening, but that's not a part of the the actual detail of the curb opening is not a part of the sediment trap detail here. The idea here, is this is comes from the out of right away group or working group, and the intention is for to be without to be outside of the right away there. So it's used for typically for private sites and for agency developments, so like libraries and parks and that kind of thing. So if you guys have had some time to review this, go ahead there and provide some comments if you can.
Okay.
And this is Peter, I'd like to add a little bit. I've used these before. They're very handy for reducing long-term maintenance in basins and keeping the basins functioning for a longer period of time. So that's I've seen these used both private and in public works areas. And I think that's one of the questions we really had, how we wanted to number it, but we thought at this point we're going to just present it and get feedback from everybody on their concept of doing this. Now, again, I think Eric's right. It could be used showing a curb cut, curb opening, but it could be used in multiple circumstances. You could actually have underflow under, a basin under the side, or the flow under the sidewalk and opening up. So there are other options you can utilize this concept.
So this is Al Smolko with Phoenix. It looks like section AA, you at your 3-inch lip at the back should be also shown on the sides. So that's not really shown correctly. And I'm just concerned about the transition point from the downslope into that little basin. Is that 3-inch lip carry over to the transition? Can it spill out before it gets there?
It's a curb that goes around 3 sides.
Okay, but that's not shown on section AA.
No, it only shows the one side, correct?
Yeah. So I'm just
to
wondering
show
how.
it beyond, you mean? Okay.
Yeah. Or
This
what that
is Warren.
transition look like.
you might have just a dashed line across there. Because I know that's the section in the middle that doesn't have that, but you could have a dashed line across there indicating that the curb is on. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So Peter, just a question on what your comment. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, a lot of these HOA basins or so on, all the sediment that, results over time prevents the basins from percolating properly. So this helps in that sense where it will collect the fines and so ons in that 3-inch area. That would then have to be removed and maintained, though, correct?
True.
Somewhat of a settling basin, right? A 3-inch settling basin.
Yeah.
For this detail, it seems like the main element is the portion at the bottom. There's an expansion joint that separates and it shows the spillway, either concrete or riprap up on top. But the curb opening or the scupper or whatever it is that the flow is coming from isn't part of this detail. And the spillway itself is really inconsequential in this detail. It seems it's showing a little bit of information, 4-to-1 minimum slope, but that's mostly it. I guess there's a length of it 2 foot, or is noted on plans also. But it seems like this detail could really just kind of show the expansion joint and the spillway for reference, but it doesn't really, the detail itself doesn't really need to include anything else other than that bottom portion.
Yeah, you're right. We could just show water coming in. How it gets there, that's a separate detail and separate process.
Right. And I can envision where this is getting used. I'm seeing it shows the water height, the high water line, 6 inches are noted on plans. I can see that varying quite a bit. 6-inch basins are not very common, but 1 foot deep basins, very common, could be even deeper. So again, that type of information, the length of that's going to depend on the depth. The length of the spillway itself is going to depend on the depth more than anything else. So again, I think the rest of that information is too project specific and not necessarily needed for this. What I like about this detail is that it's showing the sediment trap itself, the 3-inch depth, for the concrete sill, the width of the turn down, those different elements on the sediment trap itself, I think is helpful and an important part of the detail, but I think we could simplify that down.
Yeah, and I know one of the challenges we had was there is really not a spillway detail that I know of in the current details.
Well, this could be used at the end of a scupper, right, Peter?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
something
scupper,
like that.
maybe that's the term we should be looking for.
Well, and I think there were some other questions raised that are fair questions. Right now, it's showing the width of the sediment trap, including the curb, matching the width of the spillway itself coming down. And I think the question was raised, does that allow water to bypass the sediment trap itself? Or should that curb go up all the way to the curb on the sediment trap? Should it follow the spillway all the way up to the top?
Yep.
Or does the spillway itself have a angled depression? Is it depressed and have side slopes on it? Or is it flat? Or how does that all tie in? I think those are all fair questions. But again, I think those are things that can be designed specific to the project and not necessarily be part of this detail.
Correct. So try to set up more parameters for construction as opposed to design elements.
You might want to also look at that. If you're going to have a riprap spillway, it's not going to be exactly as shown. It's going to be higher than the concrete. It's going to be lower than the concrete. It's going to be all over. And that's really going to help deflect the water as long as you get that flow down into the basin, and then the silt gets to stay.
Yeah, Peter, this is Craig. What Ryan was talking about, I think that's what we try to do a lot out here is on the spillway itself is creating, I don't want to call them walls, but just something that will contain the water. So on either side of that expand or that either side of that spillway, I've seen it many times where it just completely erodes out. But something to contain the water as it comes through the opening, be it a scupper, curb opening, whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've done a few of those too, the same way. So maybe the focus on this should be less the spillway, more the sediment trap component.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But to your point, like you said, I don't know if we've got anything that actually talks about a spillway.
Now I've looked at the scupper details. They're really talking stuff. It ends kind of at the back of the sidewalk. So we don't really have anything that drops anything down there.
So I was taking a look at Mag Standard Detail 550, the spillway inlet and outlet, where it goes into some detail on the spillway. So this is what would likely be considered like a a in large part strictly in the right of way kind of spillway.
Hey, this is Carl. At 550, we use that for like major fills where we're gonna capture runoff in a curb and then direct it down an embankment to prevent erosion. ADOT is adapted from ADOT. I'm not sure if this would apply to the intent of what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah, and that's that's probably what I was trying to get at there was that it's what size or what's the magnitude that you're trying to go toward. So if you're talking about a smaller profile purpose versus a spillway used borrowed from ADOT. Not quite sure how to best break that up. Just one's for one purpose, and this is for another purpose.
I mean, we could go to the extent of breaking at a certain point and saying spillway and inlet as shown on plans.
Okay.
Yeah, there's detail 203, which is a scupper, which is intended to get water off the roadway into a drainage feature behind the sidewalk. So they actually have a detail where it goes underneath the sidewalk.
Right.
I don't know if it has a spillway with it.
No,
doesn't look like it.
And the new curb cut ones would take care of the other opportunities. So this would be the scupper version to get to the behind the sidewalk location, and the curb cuts would be behind the pavement.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we may cover that. The inlet component, I think we may have covered. It's how we don't have a spillway detail really for this circumstance. So do we just at this point not deal with it and just identify as shown on plans and really focus on the scupper, or do we want to incorporate a spillway too?
Peter, this is Warren. I agree. I think you just focus on the sediment trap area. But if you would like, Chandler has a detail C500 that you can look at that is the scupper detail that has the spillway. It has a channel that would convey the water to this trap, I believe would work.
Yeah, Peter, I think a separate spillway detail would be good, because then we're talking the spillway could be a separate component to the scupper, to the sediment trap, to whatever. I agree with that.
Yeah. So, to keep this moving forward, maybe we want to just go ahead and break it at that point. Like I said, as shown on plans, and then that gives us something to work on for next season for coming up with spillway detail. It's a bit more encompassing, and then we don't get into this riprap curbing issue. We just focus on the sediment trap component.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the easiest path forward right now. When we work on a spillway, I think that we'll want to take it in consideration with the curb cut details that we've talked about already and that are being talked about this year. But I think there's a lot of elements that go in. How do you tie in those various types of curb cuts and work it into this? So I think that's a good point.
Agreed.
Yeah. And maybe just have a note on the street side of the sediment trap that it will connect to the design spillway per plan or something.
Yeah. I think this is one we can look at as kind of an evolving one, as we attack one piece at a time, and eventually we have all the elements connected together. We're trying to develop so many different pieces. Which one do you do first? I would consider this one a very important one to have first, because if you just do a spillway, you don't deal with what's downstream. It doesn't meet the intent.
Yeah, I agree with that. So,
Okay.
any other comments?
So, for my own benefit here, do we want to show this as being 12 inches deep as far as the water depth, or the depth of water within the sediment trap, and then we're also going to be just kind of referencing the concrete spillway, as noted on the plans, and just kind of focusing just on the sediment trap. Is that the direction?
I'm almost thinking, if we look at, so you've got a finished grade note right there, finished grade erosion protection. That's going to be a given elevation on the plans. And if you go 3 inches below what that finished grade is, that's going to control any depth issues, be it 6 inches or be it 4 feet.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. I don't think we have to even define a depth.
No, I think the watermark can come off, and the 6 inches noted are on plans. I think that can come off, and your plans are going to determine your depth. I mean, the whole, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the whole intent of this is we need a 3-inch settling basin at the bottom of a water discharge area. I'm trying to be general here. Everything else can be controlled by what's on the plans.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, why don't we
Sounds
work
good.
on this, Eric, in the next group meeting, and then we can try to refine it and get it back to everybody for the following August meeting. Get a revised drawing to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
One final comment may be, again, you're only showing the back side where you've got it kind of towed in 2 inches, and you've got a 3-inch lip on there. That would be for 3 sides, and there's no reinforcing in this at all.
Yeah, in general, I've seen these unreinforced.
Yeah, you're not going to have anything driving on it. The worst you're going to have is somebody walking on it.
You may have a loader go down to scoop it occasionally. Not much.
Okay, so do you want it towed down on the 2 sides also, not just the back?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is show a cross section the other way too, then.
And once you pull the spillway, the riprap spillway and the concrete spillway sections off,
Yeah.
that at section AA, then you can put a section BB in there, and you're going to show everything you need.
Yeah.
I think that's good. All right. Any other comments? Good discussion. Thank you, Peter and Eric. If we can move on to item number 14, case number 21-14, new landscaping related specifications. New landscaping specifications, section 425 topsoil, section 430 landscaping, and section 795 landscape materials. Ryan?
Yeah, and actually, I think 2114 and 2115, those two cases go together here. And I'm the least knowledgeable person about this case I'm sponsoring right now, which is why we have so many people with us that know way more about it than I do. And so I'm not sure who wants to take the lead on explaining it, whether that's Peter, if that's you, or Zach, or Ann, or whoever else might want to walk us through these proposed changes.
I think we'll probably turn it over to Wayne. He has done an incredible
Wayne.
job herding all of this.
How could I forget Wayne? Yes,
yeah,
perfect.
I mean, and I have to say right off the bat that this was an amazing undertaking. This was taking stuff that had not been modified in decades, and that's being generous, and really working it from the bottom all the way up. And Wayne, he assembled an incredible number and variety of people to help with this effort. And again, I don't want to exclude anybody else worked on it, but Wayne kept pushing this thing through time after time. So, can I turn over to you, Wayne, and you can go at it? Explain.
Sure. Thank you, and thanks for the kind words. But as I go through this, Zach, I want to make sure that anything you think that I've misstated or didn't represent correctly, jump in. Don't hesitate. And Ryan, thank you for sponsoring all of this. You guys have jumped in there and really helped out here. So as Peter said, these sections, which are somewhat interrelated and are directly interrelated in some cases, have not been updated for a long time. So we had a committee, a working group, which was the Landscape and Irrigation Working Group. And just to let you know, the irrigation portions of this are not ready yet, so you won't see those. You only are seeing the landscape portions of what that working group was working on. But that working group had more than 45 members of different agencies and different experiences, representatives from ADOT, at least 7 or 8 municipalities, University of Arizona Extension Agency, Maricopa County. I could go on, but and there were at least 10 landscape architects involved in this. So I just want to be clear, the committee was pretty large, and what you have in front of you is a collection of all the experiences and objectives of the various people who were participating in this. But to be more specific, section 425, which is topsoil, was updated to do a couple things. One is to identify the way or the sources of topsoil that are acceptable. So whether it's salvaging from on site or from an off-site location, then what is acceptable in terms of what kind of pH and all kinds of testing that needs to be required. And then on top of that, what kind of fertility testing, which is the important part for growing plants and grass and so on and so forth. And then particularly if the option or if the topsoil is brought from like an agricultural field, we have some testing requirements to make sure we don't have any sterilants or weed killers and things like that still in it. But and then section 425 was identified as to how the topsoil could be used either as a surface plating material or a component in the backfill of planting. And then of course, with all of that, the measurement payment all had to be updated as well. Section 430 is you can see here on this image, section 430 was almost completely rewritten. It has a number of additional activities and to bring it current and in what's current in the landscape field in terms of terminology, in terms of activities, in terms of materials, and all the different kinds of things. And you can see there, this is a primary list of the outline of the places where the changes took place and or the items that were incorporated into this. Obviously, you know, you guys lost me when you were talking about the trench slurry stuff there. So I'm assuming that what I'm doing here, you're probably going to get lost as well, or your eyes are going to gloss over. But nonetheless, these are the items, and we can talk about any of the details that anybody wants to about that, what's in 430 and any of the particulars there. Similar to 795, 795 is the section that basically has the landscape materials in it. And you can see here by this list, there were a number of things that were either added, embellished, specified more clearly. And again, it has quite a bit of rewriting done to it, making it much more specific to the kinds of things that were missing as part of the original 795. So there's quite a bit here in terms of landscape related items. I'll be glad, Zach will be glad to answer any questions, and certainly we can talk about the specifics, but unfortunately, you know, the devil's in the details here. And I will say that the committee members or the working group members have all had a chance to review these. And even Peter and Gordon got in on the reviews. And so their comments have all been incorporated, and a number of other items that were requested along the way to pick up as we completed these updates. So I think the benefits to all of this, you know, one of our objectives was to try to develop these so that there would be a lesser need for each of the communities for having their own supplements. You know, we will, I believe, reduce the need for supplements because we will be creating the standards. There will be a lot more commonality in the terminology. There will be a lot more commonality in how activities are reviewed and in the field and how things need to be done. But each individual community probably is still going to have some level of idiosyncrasies, either because of the kinds of materials that they like to use or the way they like to see individual details. And so I don't think we'll really be able to eliminate the need for supplements, but it will, I believe, the real benefit here will be by having all of these landscape related items specified. The communities will not have to pay a landscape architect or another landscape professional on each project to develop these specifications. So there will be a monetary benefit to having these specifications as developed as they are. Now, having said that, and recognizing that given when you overhaul something as significantly as we did, there's probably going to be a shakedown period once these things are released because it's a combination of practices of the various landscape architects and others. And so we'll have to see, and one would expect that, you know, in a couple of years, 2 years maybe, there'll be some tweaking that will need to be done to these to refine them a little more. But in general, the community should be comforted that with these specifications and or the modifications that come from the questions that you all might have or the clarifications you'd like to have made, that these specs will satisfy the need for any landscape, pretty common landscape activities within right-of-ways, which is the intent here, and have a successful landscape project. So I'll stop there and let anyone ask a question, or if you want to get into specifics, just give a shout.
Wayne, one question that I'd ask that I think would be beneficial for the group, if you could expound on. There's a lot of changes or additions to the specifications, and obviously there's reasons for those changes, and not going into trying to debate whether they're needed or not. Could you just talk a little bit about any of the changes that you think might incur an additional cost, significant additional cost in the landscaping components of projects based on the changes to the specifications?
Well, additional costs, that's always a difficult one. Anytime you make a change like this, although I will say that these changes that are in here are relatively seen in the practice of landscape architecture. So to some degree, while it's new to MAG, it may not necessarily be new to the landscape construction industry. And I think that's an important point. So just because we have more volume doesn't necessarily equate to more cost. But some of the things that are in there in terms of the landscape particulars, one of the new items we put in here was how to deal with trees and shrubs that may be in a right-of-way that are to be left in place while the new construction takes place. Now, there was nothing for that anywhere in the MAGs in 430, but we do have some specific things that need to be done to protect those trees, such as putting up barriers around the root zone and things like that. So if you're asking, you know, are there things that are going to increase some cost? Yes, there will be definitely some items that, because of the specificity, will add some cost to it. What you're looking at here on the screen is the plant salvage. Now that's a totally different section. We all know that, you know, desert plants and other plants get salvaged out of right-of-ways and other areas. Again, the industry, depending on who put the specs together, are doing different things. This would more standardize it, and it does have some requirements, like on the plant salvage, of having the contractor prepare a transplanting plan, which is similar to what you guys were talking about the slurry and that issue of, do we get into the means and methods? No, but it would be good to have a plan that could be looked at so that there is no, there isn't knowledge going in as to what's really going to happen, and have the ability for the engineer or the agency to weigh in on whether that's an appropriate technique or not. And so that's another item there that is, you know, could cost a little more money, in that there are some specific steps that need to be followed. But I think for the most part, everything here is, because we were focusing on common activities that would happen in public right-of-ways. These things are happening all the time anyways, and depending on who the designer was, you'll get some of these specs and maybe not some of the others, but in general, these are familiar specs, I would say, that would not in their own just create a cost expansion.
And I echo some of that too, that I think there's an unbalanced savings that's going to result in certain things now that there's a lot more certainty on how do you take care of plants prior to when they're planted. How do you salvage? The goal is to retain as much so you don't have loss. And I think these really go through a great effort on showing, for at least the agency, this is what you're going to get. This is how it gets protected. And it puts an onus on the contractor to make sure those plants stay good, that the vegetation stays good, and that the owner gets what they want to in the long run.
And hey, this is Warren. It maybe is this a little bit of, since the specs were so outdated, maybe some of these things are in current practice and already being done, even though it's not currently written in the specs. Is that probably true too?
Yes, yes. No doubt that some of these activities are going on now, just not specified. And so the specified to this level, and potentially not to this level. And so therefore, what happens is you end up with the inspector, the engineer in the field, having to work through some of the issues of how the contractor may be doing something that may not be preferred or preferable, let's put it that way. So this takes some of that away from that issue of and we all know you're never going to get away from having a contractor challenge whatever it is that's in the specs, but certainly provides the inspection or the engineer the ammunition to enforce whatever's in the plans and specs. But these are, as I said, they're relatively common activities. Now, one of the things you'll see here, if you scroll back there, one more page up, whoever is in control here, we put language in here about, if you continue to go up, a language in here about lawns. And the thinking was that as we go forward, there are some communities that have turf in their right of way, and there will be a need at certain points to either minimize turf or do some work that's going to damage turf and landscaping. And so in lieu of having every project identify how they want it done, this identifies how that should be taken care of, what kind of sod might be needed, the seeds for Bermuda or ryegrass, whatever it is. So again, trying to look a little bit forward, a little bit ahead here. And even because of just climate change and the need to reduce water, the idea of demonstrating how to handle the turf aspect of it. That was never in the MAG specs before. And just a point of clarification there, we're not allowed to put new turf in. We are allowed to replace turf that has been damaged. So we're allowed to replace it. We just can't put new in. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
May I ask a question about the establishment period? It looked like that had been touched, which is good. Thank you, Wayne, for all your work here. But one question on that that's come up in our world over the years where we've had to write some supplement language for, so I see it's now 90 days. I believe the current MAG was 60.
Yes. Now, this is an item some of us struggled with as to whether 60 is adequate or 90 is appropriate. Then depending on jobs, you will see even 6 months, particularly if you got a lot of salvaged trees and things, you can see it up to that much. The obvious recommendation here is 90 days, but certainly those who may have experience that find 60 days a more viable and acceptable time period. I don't know that there would be too much heartburn in making an adjustment like that.
Well, I think historically Chandler's been using 90, but as you mentioned, there may be instances where you need more, which that can be written into a contract. But
right.
The one question I had on this,
or even less.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That term, the project, I just want to make sure if we're talking about the overall project, like a roadway improvement project that includes some landscaping in the right of way, the landscaping portion of, quote, the project may be completed before the overall project is completed. And where we've had some issues is where acceptance of the landscaping is done, and that sets the date of the warranty period, where final acceptance of the project may be down the road a bit. And that leads to some of the landscaping being, there are issues with it, maybe some trucks driving over it. So preference is that word, the project, means the final acceptance of the overall project sets when okay. So I didn't know if we needed to clarify that, because that has led to some questions.
Yeah, that's a good point. The project is different than the landscaping. The landscaping is a component of the project. So you're absolutely right. We probably do need to clarify what is meant by the project. And now I'm glad to hear that you're having the issue, or you've seen the issue that you have, because in most cases, the landscaping, the project wants to be accepted and the landscaping still isn't finished. That's a more common issue that we see, but we probably need to flesh this out a little more just to address those particular issues.
Great, thank you.
And these are really good comments I think we're going to need to get. We're not anticipating this is going to be a short process to do the review, as extensive as the changes. You get to 795 and there's new materials. But those were, a lot of those were taken from a number of city supplements.
Yes.
And, yeah, so, ooh, yeah, 795. I didn't see that in the pack. We need to make sure that gets in the package. I printed it out and I didn't see it.
Hey, I'll just mention that the term project is already defined in our definitions for MAG specifications as a whole. So if it's referring to the project closeout, that's already defined.
Yeah, and we probably just need to clarify here what we're talking about, the landscaping here, and just be more definitive about that.
Well, Wayne, I wanted to add, if I could chime into that, I think our intent was that the overall project would be complete. So following the definition that Ryan mentioned in MAG, because oftentimes the last thing that goes in is the landscape.
Right.
And it's usually the very last thing before we can accept a project.
Right.
And I think that's why we use the term project and not so much completion of the landscaping.
Yep. Right. Yep. Yeah. And this was probably I do recall that this was one of the key issues that I don't remember who was asking about that wanted this clarified, because typically the issue is if the project wants to be accepted, the landscaping is still hanging out there. The general contractor is not happy because he can't drop his bond. He can't get rid of his bond and move on to something else. So that's the real issue that we've seen a lot of. And so that's why we were trying to distinguish here between the project and the landscaping. And again, we'll work on this and clean it up a little better.
That's a good point, Wayne. I know that did come up, is project closeout is held up sometimes over this. Right. Final payments and everything else. So.
Yep. And contractors aren't happy with that.
No.
And Zach, feel free to mention anything else you feel like is relevant here. I'll just.
Yeah, no, I just want to say you did a great job kind of with everything we've discussed as a group, as a work group. Yeah, just putting emphasis on, I can also attest, at least in Mesa, that we try most of the things that are in these sections are currently being used, like the majority of them.
Yeah.
They're just being implemented through supplemental specs from the different cities or the agencies. And that's why we, as a group, thought it would be so important to try to get as much as that into one area. So there's consistency among the different municipalities, consistency within the industry. But yeah, Wayne, you did a great job covering everything. So thank you.
Just one other point I'd just like to make here is in the 795 section here, you'll notice the topsoil is at the bottom of page 1 there. And what we tried to do is to make the topsoil definition the same between ADOT and MAG. They're very close. And so anyone who, and Peter, you're probably going to focus in on that one, but the idea here was to establish common terminology and common materials. It doesn't make any sense to have MAG and ADOT describe topsoil and have them be two different things. So the thinking was we could make them both the same and simplify it for everybody. And I believe the differences were pretty minor. It was something like, percentages passing the number 40 or number 100 sieve. I don't really remember that one, but the differences were relatively minor.
I wanted to add that Peter is correct. I neglected to put this in the section 795 in the packet. So I'll add it as a linked file on the MAG web page so that you can take a look at it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Wayne. This is a pretty substantial undertaking.
Well, I don't want to take all the credit because Zach's done a yeoman's job as well. And there are others who have worked on this and provided ideas and suggestions. So it was a group effort.
Okay, well, very well done. Well, I'll get it out to our different departments and see what we can do with it. So thank you again. So with that, I'm going to move on to 15, which I believe is basically part of the landscaping related specifications, the landscaping details. Yeah, Gordon, if you can go down to the details. Wayne, I'm going to assume that this is basically the same thing here.
These are submitted as separate cases, and they can be approved independently. The specs refer to the plans and the details, but there's not a specific reference to something on a detail. So, so they can be approved separately. It would be preferable to have them either both approved or not, but they can go separately if the group, the committee wants to look at them that way.
Okay. There's a ton of work here.
Yeah, and the details, if I remember right, the majority, again, the goal was to look at existing supplements. This is not something that was just created out of whole cloth for the most part. There were existing supplements used by agencies where a lot of this came from. And Wayne, you may want to expand on that.
Yeah, I will. Many of the details, let me just say that here, are based on the City of Tempe details. Not all of them, but many of them. And, you know, various members of us have gone through and reviewed them and feel like they are certainly adequate for the purposes of what we're doing. Again, these are common activities. These are not something unique. And these you would see on any landscape set of drawings pretty routinely. So, and we tried to utilize details that would be pretty straightforward, just about anybody to utilize. We've removed some of the stuff that's Tempe specific. And in other cases, we've tried to genericize some of the things on here to make them more applicable to a broader audience and a broader user group.
And again, it introduces a challenge with the existing details because a number of agencies have added these types of landscaping details, and the current MAG really doesn't have a section for them. So that's a discussion that needs to be incorporated also with this.
Yes, you know, many of the municipalities have their own details, Tempe, Chandler, Mesa, you know, so this is one of those areas that where you're probably not going to eliminate those supplements from the cities unless they, you know, decide to adopt these. But, you know, some of the other communities that don't have these certainly would function well for them. But they're intended that way. Now, we did have, as part of the working group, a discussion about where these details would go in the standard details and what series number they might be, and you know, the things like that. But that's for a later discussion, I think.
Well, that we're kind of thrown back at the committee. Take a look at that and see. We didn't want to hold it up just for that reason, but I think that's one that's going to have to be addressed. If you look at the current details, I'm not sure they really fit terribly well, but you know, their section number's still open.
Well, in this submittal, they're numbered 1 through 18 or something, so that can be changed at any time.
Yeah, we're kind of breaking new territory here. We thought.
I agree. I think we need to look at the big picture of what the future sections we may need in MAG. I know in Chandler it's Series 800 because we have traffic, street lights, and other things that we've broken out separately. But I think, yeah, maybe that'd be another general discussion in a MAG upcoming topic of what we think we might want to use future sections for.
And then be aware there's an irrigation details that are going to come out also. This group took on such a huge chunk of work. There wasn't enough time to get to the MAG section upgrades. I mean, they've done a lot of work on it, but we needed to make the July date. And I did not want to, and I think we all agreed, we didn't want this to be held up because we didn't have it all done. There's more work to be done in terms of irrigation. So think of it also that irrigation details are going to come out. Now, when I'm talking irrigation, we're talking
landscape
type irrigation.
Yeah.
Not
landscape irrigation.
Landscape irrigation. Yeah. So as this process moves forward, maybe there needs to be a landscape and irrigation section, their detail section.
Details look very good. Drafting looks great. Compliments.
Yeah, there was a lot of work put into this, so you guys, very good work. Oh, any other comments, questions, other than what we've discussed already? Not hearing any. I know for me, I know a few people that I'm going to send this to because they'll be definitely interested in it. So, but again, thank you, Wayne, your team, Zach, everybody. And from that point, we will move on to item 16, working group reports. Water and sewer. Did I see a email, Gordon, that Jim had to leave?
Yeah, Jim has already left. I think we're running pretty late already. So unless there's some important highlights that haven't already been mentioned as we're discussing the cases, maybe we can breeze through these because the notes from all the past meetings are in the packet and people can review them if they'd like.
Okay. Okay. I know pretty much what we've discussed today are a lot of what we've talked about in the water and sewer working group. So we've touched on quite a bit that's there. From that point, I'm going to move on down to asphalt concrete. Greg, Brian, Jeff, you guys want to touch on yours a little bit?
Greg, there again, we've covered what was in the packet, and there will be no materials working group this month. There's no real reason for us to hold anything, so there won't be one this month.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. And outside of right away, Peter, I know we just covered a ton of ground.
Yeah, we monopolized your time wonderfully on this, and I don't think we need to cover it other than mentioning we will have another, our next meeting on the 22nd. We're continuing to move forward with this and some other details, but planning for next year's work, and then we've got the cleanup on the existing.
Okay, well, like I said before, excellent work on all this stuff, so thank you very much. From there, moving on to item number 17, just general discussion. I don't have anything. Well, actually, I do have. I talked with. I'm trying to remember the guy's name, Gordon. Maybe you can help me out with the state on revising. Oh, and he just slipped my mind.
Yeah, it's slipping my mind too. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, is it Dan? Anyways, on revising the AAC, the extra protection requirements. The email basically said that is still been tabled. I'm assuming it wasn't into detail, but I'm assuming it's still pandemic related. But they have not taken that up anymore. So I'll keep on it. See if I can keep getting more information and see when they finally decide to get that up and running. But there's been no more information. It's bothering me. I can't remember his name now. Other than that, I don't have anything. Gordon, do you have anything?
No, sir.
All right. Like you said, we're running short on time. So from there, I think we'll just adjourn.
Thank you for everyone hanging in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
We'll see everybody.
Thank you.